Charlene Aaron recently spoke with General Jerry Boykin, a retired three-star general and leader of the Delta Force, for more on this situation there.
General Boykin, it's a very difficult time for Syrians, and now with the president's decision to withdraw troops, what's the risk?
Well, there's a lot of risk. First of all, that leaves Israel vulnerable simply because without U.S. troops in there, Iran has basically a clear path to resupply Hezbollah with weapons of war. It also leaves the Kurds, the Yazidis, and the Christians. And don't forget about the Christians in northeast Syria. It leaves all of them, plus the Sunni Arabs. It leaves them very vulnerable to attack by the Assad government, by the Turks in the case of the Kurds, and by Islamic groups there. And we need to remember that many of the Christians up in northeast Syria there are former Muslim background believers. In other words, they converted from Islam to Christianity, and they were run out of the villages that they lived in, and they've all congregated there. So that could be a Christian and a Kurdish genocide up in that area if we don't leave measures in place to help protect them.
Amazing. You are also the executive director of the Family Research Council, and you wrote about the plight of Syrian Christians. You just mentioned Christians on your website. What is the greatest concern for them and other religious minorities right now?
Well, the greatest concern is for the Christians is that either the Assad government or the Islamic groups that want that area back, and that also believe that by fulfilling the dictates of the Quran, they place themselves in a better position with Allah, and that dictate is to kill infidels. So they are vulnerable to at least the government and Islamic groups, and they may be, just by virtue of proximity, they may be vulnerable to Turkish attacks in there that are directed primarily at the Kurds.
And the Kurds have been our allies. What will happen to them?
Well, the Kurds, that's exactly right, and thanks for pointing that out. If you want to know what will happen, go back and look at the first Gulf War. After the first Gulf War ended in 1991, we left the Kurds in northern Iraq, and we did nothing for them. We left them with no means of defending themselves, with no military support of any kind. And Saddam Hussein killed about 30,000 of them. In fact, he killed over 30,000. And then we turned around and left them again 7 years ago when we pulled out of Iraq. We left them again, and we left them without military hardware. And every time we tried to resupply them or give them something, we sent it through Baghdad. We sent it to the government of Baghdad, and it got siphoned off and given to either the Iranians or the Shia militias inside of Iraq there, and the Kurds got nothing. So they've been fighting against Islamic groups like ISIS, but also against Shia militias ever since we left there 7 years ago, and they've had scant little support from the United States. And what has come that has actually gotten to them has actually been through private organizations for the most part.
Wow. There is also talk of drawing down troops in Afghanistan. What's your opinion about that?
Well, I'm ready to get the troops out of Afghanistan. And what we don't know is exactly what the intelligence assessments say right now in terms of the Taliban, a resurgence of the Taliban. And that has to be calculated based on what are our vulnerabilities if we pull out versus what are our vulnerabilities if we stay. I think the sooner we get out of there, the better, but we need to do it in the right kind of way and not the way Barack Obama did it 7 years ago.
Finally, what kind of leader would you like to see replace General Mattis at the Pentagon?
Yeah, listen, first of all, I want to say that I think Jim Mattis did exactly the right thing. Unlike Leon Panetta and Bob Gates, who stayed in the administration, supported abysmal policies by Barack Obama, and then got out and wrote books and tried to recoup their reputations. No, Mattis stepped up. He said, I can't support this. I resign. Right thing to do. And I am certainly not aligned with him politically on most issues. I think he's probably a little left of center. But that said, I do respect him for having the courage to do that. Now, what do I want? I want to see a I want to see a leader that is not a yes man for our president. I support our president. Look, I think the decision to pull out of Syria is not a good decision, but I support him on everything that he has done thus far. But I don't think we want a yes man in there. So I think we've got to have somebody that will push back on the president when they disagree with him. And if you ask me who to put in that, I would put Tom Cotton in there. I think the senator from Arkansas, he has some military experience. He's a brilliant guy, and he's been a very strong voice in the Senate. And I think he'd be a good choice. And he was mentioned early on in the Trump administration.
General Jerry Boykin, thank you so much for joining us today, sir.